Hi there, and welcome to this Read Woke video. I'm Tara, a programming librarian with the Cedar Rapids Public Library, and today I will be talking with you about the diverse local history of Cedar Rapids. So first we will talk about Native Americans in Iowa and LINN County. The state of Iowa is actually named after the Iowa Indians who lived in our region in the latter part of the 18th century before Iowa was incorporated as a state. They lived near the Council Bluffs area, and then they moved along the Des Moines River in northwest Van Buren County around 1760. Van Buren County includes the towns of Keosauqua and Kilbourne. They were forced to leave these homelands in the 1800s and were moved to reservations in Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma. If you are looking for information on Native American history closer to Cedar Rapids, you can visit Wiki Up Hill. It's located in the southwest Toddville area. This area was once home to the Oneida, Iowa, and MOSQUE people, and there are Native American burial mounds and remnants of villages. The Sac and Fox tribes also hunted and trapped along the Cedar River before the arrival of the first white settlers in Iowa. If you'd like to learn more about the Iowa Indians, consider watching a film called Lost Nation, the Iowa. Now we'll move on to early Cedar Rapids history. Cedar Rapids was actually originally named Rapids City. A land survey was made in 1841, and the newly formed town was named Rapids City after the rapids on the Cedar River. That name was later changed in 1848 to Cedar Rapids. And the cedar part also comes from the cedar trees planted along the banks of the Cedar River. Our city was officially incorporated as a city in 1849, and we started with a population of less than 400. The first African American settler in Cedar Rapids that we know of is Ellen Taylor. She was born into slavery in Virginia, and she arrived in Cedar Rapids in 1865. She's also the great-grandmother of Dr. Russell L. Collins, a Reserve Officer Training Corps member from 1945 to 47. I have a picture of Russell here. He was actually honored posthumously in 2009. His family was presented with a Congressional Gold Medal and 5 service awards that he had earned more than 50 years ago. And here's a picture of Ellen Taylor's grave marker that is in the Oak Hill Cemetery. More early African American history in CR. We're going to talk about the Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church, also known as AME. It's the oldest African American church in Cedar Rapids. It was established in 1871 and built in 1874. The first associate pastor was Reverend Andrew Ford. Another church that you can look into that is an early African American church in Cedar Rapids is Christ Sanctified Holy Church. And if you'd like to visit the location of Bethel Church, it is close to the library and also close to the United States Postal Service along 6th Street Southeast. Another place you should be aware of is the Marshall Perkins Restaurant. It was the first Black-owned restaurant in Cedar Rapids. It opened initially at 205 2nd Street Southeast, which you can see circled top left, and then later moved to 43 1st Avenue in 1891. It was famous for its oysters, and Marshall Perkins was the owner, and he's pictured second from left. And you can learn more about the Marshall Perkins restaurant at this website. Two more notable places in Cedar Rapids that you should know about is Riverside Park. In the 1890s, African Americans, some of whom had personally endured slavery or fought for the Union, they organized annual Memorial Day and Emancipation Day celebrations at Riverside Park, and you can see that pictured here in the map. And this is an excerpt from a local paper from an event that was going to happen on September 22nd, 1899. Oak Hill Cemetery is a place of interest. It The cemetery was not segregated. It was established in the 1850s, and the developers at the cemetery were from free states, and some were abolitionists. And many families buried there can be traced back to Buxton, Iowa. There are well-known African-American Cedar Rapids citizens buried there, such as Cecil Reed, Viola Gibson, Marshall Perkins, William Oliphant, and George Russell Collins. If you'd like to learn more about the cemetery and notable citizens buried there, you can follow these 2 links. And the great thing about these links is they tell the personal stories of the citizens who were buried there, of some of the citizens. Okay, let's move on to 1900, to the years 1900 to 1930s CR. So we're going to talk about the Tyler School, which was built in 1886 to serve the families and community who lived in and near the diversely populated Oak Hill neighborhood. And Jane Boyd, who you've probably heard of, started working at the Tyler School around 1894. She helped set up a school program to make sure that the kids had milk. She mended and delivered clothing to families in need and took some of the children to the doctor at her own expense. And one of the books that talks about her life said that an average of 67 kids came to her every day she worked at Tyler School. And later she retired from teaching. Not too long later she retired from teaching and started a community house called the Model House, which opened in 1921 just 5 blocks south of the Tyler School. And it was a community house to serve the families of Oak Hill. And eventually, a permanent location opened in April 25th of 1929 and was named the Jane Boyd Community House. And if you'd like to learn more about Jane Boyd and the community house, visit the website here at the bottom. All right, we're going to talk about the Mother Mosque and Little Mexico. So the Mother Mosque was built in 1934, and it was the first building in America designed and constructed as a place of worship for Muslims. And after worshiping there for 40 years, the community moved to the new Islamic Center built in 1972. So we in Cedar Rapids had the first Muslim temple that was designed and constructed as a place of worship. And you can see the location of the Mother Mosque, which is still standing, pictured here. Little Mexico. The first immigrants from Mexico came to CR to work on the railroad around 1910. And in 1918, the National Secretary of Labor, William Wilson, lowered the bar for people to immigrate to the United States from Mexico. Many of the Mexican immigrants in CR, in Cedar Rapids at that time, lived in railway cars and poorly constructed shacks. But as years passed, enterprising immigrants were able to buy houses near the rail yard, and that area started to be known as Little Mexico, and I have it circled here. It was situated near St. Luke's Hospital and the railroad tracks and encompassed A, B, and C Avenue here. A Avenue Northeast, B Avenue, and C Avenue Northeast. Eventually, developers made plans to route Interstate 380 through the area, and over time the properties were acquired and demolished by the city to make room for the interstate. Let's talk about the pre-civil rights era in CR. So we're going to start it pretty early, earlier than probably you would think of the pre-civil rights area, but I wanted to talk about some really neat and notable people who lived in Cedar Rapids. So Virgil Powell was Cedar Rapids' first black police officer, and he started at the station from 1924 to 1946. He was the son of former slaves, and he actually arrived in Cedar Rapids in 1918 and ran his own car wash before he was hired as a police officer. And it took his own effort and concerted effort and support from the community in order for him to get hired. And he's pictured fourth from left here. And I'd also like to talk about Art Pennington, who was nicknamed Art Superman Pennington. And he played baseball in the 1940s for Negro League teams. And then he started owning a home at 922 5th Street Southeast in 1953 when he was playing for local baseball teams. Later, he played in the American Minor League in places like Cuba, Mexico, Venezuela, and the Dominican Republic before he retired from baseball in 1959. And then he started working at Collins Radio in the 1960s, and he owned and operated the Home Run Cafe, which was once located at 1200 5th Street Southeast. And if you'd like to learn more about these gentlemen, you can visit the websites I've listed below. Okay, and we're moving on to the Civil Rights era in Cedar Rapids. And I have several notable people and places to talk to you about. We have Viola Gibson, who is pictured bottom right. So she was involved with helping desegregate the Ellis Pool. So Ellis Pool was Cedar Rapids' first public pool that opened in 1941. And Viola Gibson's nephew, Robert Johnson, was an African-American student at Coe College, and he was denied entrance to the pool in 1942. So Gibson rallied the local community to help, and she aided in founding a local branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And as a result of her efforts and the community's efforts, the pool opened up times for African Americans to swim, and then the pool was eventually desegregated. And you may know of a local school and park that are named in Gibson's honor. We'll talk about Dr. Percy and Lilia Harris. Dr. Percy was the first black physician in Cedar Rapids, and he and his wife, with help from their pastor Robert Armstrong, fought and won the right to purchase land, and they ended up building a house in what was a historically white neighborhood. And you can learn more about Harris in another Read Woke video here. So one of our previous Read Woke videos was all about their house and their battle to buy the land for their house. And then you may never have heard of the Sepia Motel, but that was established by Cecil and Evelyn Reed in 1953. And at the time, it was only among a dozen places in Iowa where African Americans could find a place to stay overnight in a motel-like situation. And Cecil Reed later served in the Iowa legislature, and he advocated for civil rights and fair housing. To learn more about the legacy and work of Viola Gibson, you can visit this website down below. All right, and let's move into modern day Cedar Rapids. So we have a few notable buildings. We have the African American Museum, which was established in 1993 by members of the local Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church, and the current facility as it stands was built in 2003. And it contains a variety of information and exhibits that showcase African American history and heritage. You can visit their website here at blackiowa.org. And then even more recently, we have a new public health building named in the honor of Dr. Percy and Lilia Harris, which was opened in 2019 and is pictured below. It also includes youth development services and a playground and gymnasium that during non-COVID times are open to the neighborhood for use after business hours. And here are Lilia and Dr. Percy Harris pictured here. And then one notable website that I would like you all to know about is Inclusive ICR, which includes current information on diversity and resources in Cedar Rapids and the Iowa City area. If you'd like to learn more, you can visit this website, and I also did a Read Woke video a few weeks previously. So I'd like to thank you for joining me on this journey of the diverse local history of Cedar Rapids. And then I have some additional place locations and references here. So if you'd like to learn more about any of the information pictured, here are some great websites to start with. And then I also have the locations of the where Virgil Powell worked at the original King Building Police Station, and the Sepia Motel, which was located near Triple Play Park off Mount Vernon Road, and then as well as Art Pennington's house. So thank you again, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact the Cedar Rapids Public Library.